Hello, it's Taylor talking. Hey guys, before we start this week's episode, I wanted to fill you in on something. The holidays are coming up and we are all searching for the perfect gift. Well, this week's episode is sponsored by Honey, and Honey is a browser extension that finds and applies coupons at online checkout. All you have to do is download the free browser and make sure to use code Taylor for 10% off your next purchase. Now, on to this week's episode. Welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, Taylor. Happy December 7th. I hope you guys are all having a fantastic holiday season so far. I'm currently wrapped up in a warm blanket with a candle burning, so I guess you could say I'm enjoying the colder weather, but this week's episode is definitely one of my favorites and I can't wait to share it with you. So let's get started. This week, we are discussing social change. Now, stay with me, but there has been lots of arguments around the topic. Does it take a strong leader or does it take a group of people to really make a change? Well, as always, I got invested and I started doing my research. I came to the conclusion that social progress is only possible if it comes from the people, as shown throughout the civil rights, women's rights, and recycling movements. Okay, so when I first got started with this, my mind immediately went to one of the most important movements in history, the civil rights movement. I kicked off my research with Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. In paragraph 25, he says, "With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will one day be free." I'm not going to lie, this quote really hit me. Martin Luther King Jr. was just such an incredible speaker and was such an influential person in the civil rights movement. In his speech, he really is expressing that in order to achieve true equality, we all must work together to end segregation. I also read Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham jail, and in paragraph 50 through 51, he expresses, "And in some not too distant tomorrow, the radiant stars of love and brotherhood will shine over our great nation with all their sanctifying beauty. Yours for the cause of peace and brotherhood." He wrote this when he was in prison during the civil rights movement. He wanted everyone to continue fighting for freedom, and he says that in the distant tomorrow, he hopes that the nation can come together with love and brotherhood. Peace and justice was needed and would not be achieved unless through togetherness, and MLK knew that. Okay, next up is the women's rights movement. Now, I searched for a book and I think I may have found one everyone should read. Karen Blumenthal wrote Let Me Play, a book on how women got together and fought not only for their sports rights, but for their overall equality in the world. On page 22, Karen writes, "More than 50,000 people marched down Fifth Avenue in New York City seeking equality for women at work and home." Now, to give some back insight, this was occurring right before the Vietnam War. Up until now, women were constantly told they weren't supposed to get an education, but stay home and take care of things. Women wanted equality just like men, and to prove it, they marched on one of the biggest cities in the world. And it wasn't just one person. They knew one person could not convince the world to change their way. So more than 50,000 people went and marched for equality. Karen also states on page 71, "Meanwhile, a coalition of education representatives and women's groups representatives, including the AAUW, the League of Women Voters, the National Federation of Business and Professional Women, and the National Education Association agreed to work together to lobby Congress." Wow, that is a lot of groups. So right now, Karen is talking about when Title X, which was a law to make women equal to men, was coming into place. Now, this law went back and forth multiple times, but women wanted an education, so they formed groups, not just one, over 5, and these groups had over 3.5 million members that all pushed for the success of the women's movement. So for my last movement, I decided to choose a more scientific one, the recycling movement. In the recycling crisis, theweek.com writes in paragraph 4, for example, "You would have to personally recycle 40,000 plastic bottles to offset your carbon footprint from taking one round-trip flight between New York City and London." Guys, this was just crazy to me. One person alone would have to recycle 40,000 bottles to cancel out just one round-trip flight. I know personally, I don't even come close to recycling that much. Imagine how much more materials we could save by recycling if everyone did it versus just one person. I also found while reading The Big Government Solution to the Recycling Crisis by Meena Venkataraman, it stated in paragraph 5, "Our association came together with other recycling stakeholders and other material groups to create a coalition to bring attention to the issue, drive innovation, and improve our existing domestic recycling infrastructure." This evidence was so good because it really talked about how all the recycling associations actually came together to help spread the word. And by that, they were able to ultimately start to improve our development with recycling. Many would argue that without a leader, change would never even get started. And for example, Steve Jobs, the creator of the most purchased technology brand, once said, "Innovation distinguishes itself between a leader and a follower." And Hitler also once said, "He alone who owns the youth gains the future." Hitler and Jobs were both single leaders who both changed history. But while some would say it only takes a leader, that is false. A commander cannot go to war without his troops. He may guide them, but they will not succeed without every soldier out on that battlefield. Andrew Carnegie, an assist in leading the expansion of the steel industry, once said, "No man will make a leader who wants to do it all himself." I think that pretty much sums up why a group is needed and not just a leader. All in all, these movements required the help of everyone, not just one person. To conclude, as seen through the civil rights, the women's rights, and the recycling movement, without the coming together of people, social change cannot be achieved. All right, guys, well, that concludes this week's episode. Happy holidays, and I'll see you next week. Bye!